So next up, we have our industry panel, Forging the Future, Safety, Diversity, and Technology in the Mining Industry. We'll have industry experts join us on stage as we delve into the intersections of mining, health, safety, diversity, and the need to attract fresh talent while embracing cutting-edge technology. I have the honor of introducing Samantha Espley, who's going to be our panel moderator today. Samantha is a senior executive mining advisor with Stantec. She is a highly experienced mining engineer with more than 35 years in the industry, leading operating teams and technical services group as engineering manager of capital projects and as a corporate director leading innovation and technology for mines and processing facilities. Samantha is a recipient of the Governor General's Gold Medal, Women in Mining Technology Trailblazer Award, Engineering Management Award of Excellence, and a Global Top 100 Women in Mining. Samantha is a chair of the Health and Safety Society and past president of the CIM, a fellow and industry chair of the Canadian Academy of Engineers, and executive advisor for Stantec. Please welcome Samantha.
You want me to just sit down? Okay. Okay, thank you, Alicia. I'm going to invite my panel now to come on up and get comfy. And we'll have a little bit of a chat with these fine panelists. Yeah, please, Stella, Rod, Sandra, and Gus. That's bright, eh? Yes. Okay. So thank you, Alicia, for opening us up on this session, and thank you to Jeffrey for setting some of the stage for what we're going to be talking about today. And really, yeah, it's the intersection, right, of what's happening with people, what is happening with the leadership of the people in our organization, with technology that's coming in, and we also want to talk a little bit about diversity as well as what is going on with this change that is rapidly happening. And so, you know, I'm tremendously honored to have such a diverse panel. Like, you guys are going to be really enlightening this audience with the knowledge that you bring today. And I'm going to start now just to ask, Gus, maybe we could start with you, just to give us a quick update. Why are you here? Like, what do you do? And why is this important to you?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I mean, it's important to share knowledge across different areas of expertise. Mining is a very, very diverse industry. I mean, it's like running a city within a city, and probably even more complex than that. So you do need talent from all kinds of walks of life, and it's good to also showcase that. And you know, I was talking earlier about the work that we're doing in high schools and things like that, just to promote our area, and even within ourselves, that there's so much opportunity in mining, and we can dive into it today.
Okay, thanks, guys. Sandra, introduce yourself. Why are you here? Why is this important to you?
Well, I've been an advocate in health and safety for over 30-some years, most recently with WSN as one of their board members. And so it's really of interest to me to see where we're going for the future. And I do have some opinions on that from the perspective of the organization. But one of the things that most people don't know is my father was a miner. I was born and raised in Sudbury in the north, and I am tied to the north and to mining. So from that perspective, just one little thing I'd like to share. When I grew up, in my neighborhood, everybody spoke one language. One spoke Polish, one spoke French, one spoke Italian, one spoke German. So I think we're seeing a little bit more of that diversity again today, and I'm interested in partaking in that conversation.
Rod, what about yourself? What brings you here? What's important to you, and how does that resonate with you?
What's important to me is the deep connection between business success and healthy and safe workplaces and healthy people. And there's such a strong economic reason to invest in health and safety, and just really connecting the dots for organizations to see that investing in health and safety is good for business. I'm also an advocate that we can do much, much better with respect to our results in Ontario and Canada with respect to health and safety. So there's also a strong moral reason that I think we all need to take responsibility and as a society look at the results and say this is unacceptable.
Thank you for that. And Stella.
Hi, everybody.
Maybe share, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank everyone. Stella from MacLean Engineering. So my perspective is on the side of the manufacturer and the technology, developer. So I think what we're seeing is that we have really, out of the gate went really quickly in developing technology. But what we didn't see in the industry is that that was matched by skills, talent, and training. So I think everyone feels the same thing, is that we're trying to catch up. And we're trying to think outside the box. We're trying to think about ways to get skills development, train people faster, look at different ways of, bringing on talent. So today, I want to discuss, as a community, what are those different options? How do we recruit more people, and how do we do it safely?
Okay, thank you. So we're going to talk now, just as Stella has very nicely set the stage for that. We're going to get into a little bit of a technology conversation. I'm going to ask each of you your opinion on the technology in particular. And, so in my mind, the technology is actually a bit of an enabler for safety and health. I really believe that, but I want to see if you agree. And I'll start with you, Gus, actually, and then just maybe share your thoughts here. What exactly will advancements in technology do in terms of positively impacting health and safety?
Yeah, I got a lot of passion for this because, I lost a grandfather to mining. I lost an uncle, several friends. I've got a history within the area and with loss. So the biggest positive impact that technology will have and is already starting to have is creating that safer workplace for people to participate in. At the same time, while we're driving for more safety, we're also creating new technologies, whether it's mechanized, whether it's software, whether it's IoT, so that more people can participate. So the diversity starts kicking in at that point, right? It's making the workplace available for more people. And it's, there's no denying that we need more people to come to mining. So I think by having as much technology as we can provide to create that landscape for people to thrive in, it'll generate a very exciting future for mining where it's no longer an industry. I think people think about the pickaxe, like the dirty side of the business, but that we need talents from all walks of life and a lot of diversity of thought to be leaner, stronger, faster, cheaper, and provide the critical minerals that the world requires.
Okay, great points. And I'm going to jump to you, Rod. What is your opinion on this in terms of advancements in technology and innovation, and how that will impact the health and safety of our industry?
Yeah, I think technology is a huge enabler for health and safety. I'm really excited about the future. I've seen extended reality technology and what that can do in terms of creating safe environments like labs that can help train employees before they actually go into the reality, which can be an excellent ground for new workers to be able to test some of their skills. I've also seen anthropometry data and how that can help, particularly from an inclusion perspective, by having more accurate measures on people's bodies, and can really be helpful in terms of removing some of the barriers for a diverse workforce. And wearable technology is fast approaching as well, and how that can help really gather data that can help us understand exposure, and how that exposure can then help with processes and techniques around how workers work. So Jeff was saying earlier about sprains and strains, one of the leading injuries in mining. Well, with wearable technology, we'll be able to better understand what body movements are actually leading to those incidents. And by understanding that, we can then put into practice back into the labs, because it's kind of a lab field opportunity with wearable technology to understand how we can do our jobs differently that can prevent those injuries from happening in the first place.
Perfect. Those are great examples. And I'm going to move to you, Stella. So, you know, with MacLean and a lot of the work that you are leading in terms of battery electric fleets for the mining industry, I just, you know, I'd like you to piggyback on this conversation and tell us from your perspective how the BEVs are going to positively impact the health and safety of mining.
Okay, so again, on the personal impact side of it, you know, my father was a miner as well. And what I see today with his health is that, you know, the diesel particulate, being in a mine where you're operating, you know, 20 pieces of diesel equipment and nobody's really looking at the DPMs, his health has been drastically impacted by that today. So for the miners today, we're seeing the introduction of battery electric vehicles having a huge impact on their overall health and hearing as well, because there's a noise reduction. So okay, that's the biggest topic that everyone is always talking about battery electric. But then there is also the introduction of, you know, autonomous vehicles, the introduction of robotic equipment. This equipment is allowing us to open up the, you know, the workforce that we're trying to target. It's allowing us to target women in general. Again, I'm not up here to do a pitch on the equipment that we're manufacturing, but right now we're looking at a robotic bolter. That's going to allow us to have females operating that from a chair. And I think that's fundamentally a game changer. So technology is advancing that. So I think that's, you know, the manless mine, that's going to bring us forward for, you know, a more safer operation.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm very excited to see that coming.
Me too.
I'm going to pass it to Sandra now. Sandra, what do you think? What should, you know, the mining industry consider now from a proper due diligence, legal implications in terms of adopting new technology, and some of the challenges really that we need to think about as well? Like we heard some positives, but give us the, you know, the other side of the coin.
Okay, so from my perspective, some of the things that we've seen in mining that have, and in other industries that have caused injury are some of the robotics, because robotics are very unforgiving. So when something goes wrong, it's usually pretty significant. And so from the legal side, I would, you know, when we get into legal cases, everything's pulled back out on the table. It's the testing of it. It's the written reports on how to utilize it. It's the training. It's the understanding of the training. It's the hiring practices. All of those things have to be covered off when we're looking at what we're bringing in technology, because this room in particular understands that safety really relies on understanding that all of those pieces are in place, including what happens when something actually goes wrong. So those records are very, very critical to you. So from that perspective, education, understanding of the new technology is critical. From a legal standpoint, it can get you into things like court cases, negligence. It pulls just about everybody back into the case. It pulls the producer of it, the manufacturer, it pulls the employer. It pulls everybody back into a case when something goes dramatically wrong. So from that perspective, here today, I'm sure we're interested in really making sure that all those things are in place.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that other perspective. We talked a little bit already about the importance of diversity. We know that there's a gap looming in our industry, and so let's talk a little bit more about the diversity of our workforce and how we're actually going to go about outreach to society, paint a better picture of the mining industry, but also fill some of those gaps. How do you do that with some of these senior people leaving and a much junior, let's say, inexperienced workforce coming in? And Sandra, I want to start with you on this one, and because I know you understand the statistics well, and I'd like you to paint the picture for the audience. What's imperative here for the industry when it comes to diversity?
Okay, so when we're looking at diversity today, if you're reviewing and looking at the immigration statistics, for example, when we're dealing with a workforce shortage, it's really critical to understand that the population is increasing significantly from immigration in itself. I believe it was like 410,000 in 2021, 467. We're targeted for 500,000 people for the next 2 to 3 years coming into the country. And a lot of that, as much as we're welcoming to this beautiful country, a lot of that is because we have work shortage. We have workforce shortages. And so that's going to have a major implication, because we're going to go back to those things that I was saying. Everybody spoke English, and everybody may or may not understand the things that we're trying to relay to them. For example, if you talk about mines in Africa, there's plenty of them, but how safety is looked at may not be the same culture as what we have. So making them understand the culture, making sure that they understand the processes and the policies, and recruiting to that point, right? That really, when we're talking to people, we have to make them understand that this is our expectation, we've worked hard to get here, and this is where we need to go.
Great, thank you, Sandra. And yeah, please pass to Gus. Gus, I'd really like to hear from you what you see and believe around diversity and the impact to the mining industry.
I mean, there's no doubt about it that we need a lot of different thought processes for a lot of the things we're doing. There are a lot of things that are evolving very quickly, and there's a lot of things that have been staying the same for a long time. So the more that we can attract different frames of thought and different groups of people to help create those new processes of the future and those new the minds of the future, if you will. That's where I think we can get a lot of the benefits that come with diversity, and as well as a harmonious workplace. I mean, I've been surrounded with in a workplace in my previous careers where I would walk into a workplace that was all women, and it's not very different than a workplace with all men. You need that mix for harmony to exist, right? So like when you think about groupthink, man, that's what happens, right? Yeah. So. At the same time, I mean, when I took a look at it, like my father told me, don't go in mining. My whole life, don't go to mining, don't go to mining. And my father is like half my size, right? And he's like, listen, you don't want to go there. It beats you up, and you know, it's just not the career you want to have, and so on. But what he was telling me, and I found out only later on, was that he wanted me to, if I was to go in mining differently than what he did. Right? Challenge the norms, challenge what's going on, think about different ways to do it so that you have a life after your career, that you can actually enjoy retirement, that you can actually spend time with your kids, and so on. So by having that frame of thought and having more people to create those new processes and those new ways of being, because we've got smaller men, we got bigger men, we got small, you know, we just have a lot of people to make up this world. So it's only to our advantage to include as many of those people as we can into our sector, so that we can really have an educated process and really have an informed panel when we're putting things in place for what the mine of the future is going to look like.
Yeah, I love that perspective too. And you didn't even listen to your father, so thank you for being part of the mining industry as a result. But bringing in a different perspective, which you know, the diversity is not just, you know, gender, right? It's perspectives as well. And
yeah.
So
like one of the biggest things that we bring up in tech all the time is that just because you can doesn't mean you should. Right. So I remember one job that I was trained to do. It involved a 20-foot ladder. It involved holding a drill, hanging onto the screen, drilling my holes. You can do it that way, but we got man baskets, we got all kinds of new technology. So just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean that you should. And you know, think out the box, and you can get some really good results.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. I'm going to pass to Rod now. You know, so can you piggyback on this conversation? So WSIB, what are you seeing? What you know? How does diversity really impact the mining industry?
Well, I think Sandra's statistics make it really clear that organizations need to adapt, and it's going to be really important to have an inclusive culture within your organization to welcome people. It's important from the perspective of, I think, the core of a health and safety culture. Inclusivity is really, really important. You know, it speaks to the internal responsibility system within an organization as well. If the internal responsibility system is going to work, which is what drives a health and safety culture, then people need to see themselves as a part of that organization and need to be able to have a voice in that organization. I think as well, just from a business perspective, inclusivity is really key, because you want to attract the best people. You want to attract people, for sure, but you want to attract the best people. And if you're going to attract the best people, then your organization needs to be seen by everyone as a place that they're welcome and want to work.
True. That's a great point. I think that's true. Like you always want to be involved, with a great company. Yeah, so that's really important. So on the heels of that, Stella, tell us from your point of view now, how would you go about attracting and retaining that top talent that Rod has just talked about?
When we figure it out, we'll let you know. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's not true. So, I'm staring at our HR director in the audience, who's really been pivotal in helping our company, look at different ways of, safety, diversity, and inclusion, and educating us, on our unconscious bias, which I didn't even realize I possessed, and the rest of my leaders and managers also possessed, which was, having us rule out candidates that were great for roles. So that was a real eye-opener. Blind recruitment processes, creating a culture from the top that everybody understands that safety, inclusion, and diversity is a core value and a principle of the company. In explaining and educating them, what does that actually look like so that they understand it? You can go into the different recruitment initiatives that your company would deploy, but I think those are things that everyone's already looking at. Those are the, you can take them, pick them off. I think flexibility in your work schedule is a really important tool to be using. I don't think we use it enough. We all get caught up in the same box. Standard work hours are from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and we think that everyone needs to fit within that parameter. But I think if we look at, and again, I'm not just trying to, look at diversity and inclusion as far as just being women, but when we do look at recruiting women, we have a lot on our plate. We have children, and having a schedule that is flexible to allow women to be mothers is a conversation topic that I don't hear enough from a lot of employers. And it's something I'm passionate about because it's something my employer gave me. So I think that that's a conversation topic that would help improve recruiting more women into the industry.
That's a great point. I actually remember reading about, I think it was Tech, who created spaces at a daycare for their employees so they could have a place for their children so they could get back into the workplace. So I think those are great ideas, and those are the types of things that we're wanting the audience to hear and take back to your organization. Let's just switch gears a little bit now. I want to talk about leadership. Leadership, when it comes to health and safety, leadership is obviously pivotal. In my experience, that supervisor layer within the organization is absolutely critical. You have to have the right people in role at that level because they are the ones interfacing, right, with the crews every day. And the crew makeups today are changing, and we see that. And I want to talk about this now. You have the younger inexperienced from a mining point of view this group coming into the industry, but they're very tech savvy. If I need help with a computer, I'm going to go to this younger person rather than, to my dad. Like he wouldn't know. So I think, but if I needed help in mining, I would go to my father. He's a master builder. He's been in the industry forever. So, and then you have technology that's just this piece that's swirling around us. And I want to go to you, Rod, first, and just ask you about, what does the industry need to do to manage this shift that's happening right now, and how do those leaders prepare for this shift in order for them to be successful?
So I think there's a couple things. One, when we look at the mining industry, it's the same as in many other sectors where young workers, the incidents are happening with them using machinery, using equipment. And back to our technology conversation, as leaders in the organization, we need to find ways to better train, but also better prepare them for using that equipment before it's a reality for them. So, this concept of using technology in labs again, extended virtual technology is one of the ways that we can better prepare young workers to be ready for the tasks that they're going to be doing in an organization. I think the other part from a leadership perspective comes back to culture. Having an environment where workers actually have voices in the organization. It's not just a policy. It's actually living and breathing in an organization is really key, because it's those conversations that we get to know our workers better, and we get to better understand ideas and concepts that can create safer workplaces. And I also think as leaders, we need to understand that an investment in health and safety is a really important investment from the perspective of the economics of it. It pays for itself. So the WSIB did a study with the Institute for Work and Health, and that study concluded that every dollar that's invested in health and safety, the return on investment is up to $2.14. But in every sector, there was a positive return on investment. So I think as leaders, we need to step back and ensure we've got the right culture, that we're using the technology that's available to us to ensure that staff are ready to do the job safely. But also look at it from the economic lens, that you're not only doing the right thing, it's actually a positive payoff for your business.
Yeah, that's a great point. And maybe we'll just ask Stella if you could just, piggyback on this thought now and add to the debate. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to piggyback the empowering voices, because I think that's a really good comment. I think first it starts with the culture for the company, first and foremost. Okay. Any organization needs to embrace specific initiatives, so safety, health, diversity, inclusion, and that has to be felt throughout the organization. And your people need to be empowered to be able to, share their thoughts, share their concerns and feel safe to do it.
Right.
Is there a culture where they can actually share that communication with you without being, perceived in trouble for doing that? And then it's simple. It's training. How are you providing the training to your leaders? Is there any type of, is it blended learning approaches? You talked about working with new technology. Again, we're advancing technology at such a rate that we're trying to catch up in all of our training measures. And I see that even with my own organization. We're deploying the technology and then coming up with the ways to train our people. And it's a bit backwards. So we see the industry need for the technology, but then it's like, oh, the people come second. We have to reverse that, and the people have to come first, and then the technology. So I think it's about the culture, and I think it's about the investment in your overall training for your people.
Oh yeah, those are excellent points, and I know culture, right, is always fundamental when it comes to building a solid leadership and organization. And I'm just going to go to Gus now, and we're just sort of carrying on in the theme here. So we have a lot of retiring baby boomers. They're going to, is this fact actually going to disrupt our industry, do you think, Gus? Like, where do you see that? And if you have all this boomer knowledge leaving, what are we going to do, with this younger, inexperienced workforce coming in?
Yeah, so the first call of action is start collecting that knowledge now. If you haven't started yet, start doing it immediately. Because it's going to happen before you can blink, right? So I think, and I'm seeing it now in training sessions that we offer, because we're a technology provider, and a lot of the times is, well, the workforce isn't going to use this, the older guys aren't going to catch on to this, and it's all stories, okay? It's all stories you've made up, okay? So just let's put that on the table, right? But at the same time, what we see in the classroom is, yes, the younger generation is picking it up quicker, like within seconds, but they don't understand why they need to pick it up, okay? Where the knowledge comes in, and knowledge transfer, is that in those training sessions, even if you have a retiring workforce, having them take part of those technology onboardings and having them take part of those implementations, they get to educate the younger workforce that's coming in why this is going to cover their ass, right? Why it's going to benefit them in their careers, why it's going to help them in communication. So although you got to spend a little bit more time with the older generation to kind of catch on to the tool itself, which it's a lot faster than most give it credit. It's that cross-pollination that you have the opportunity to capitalize on today. Like, do it now. If you wait a few more years, you've lost that momentum, or you've lost that opportunity, and then just get ready for things to get blown up, right? So not to give it a reference to mining, but you're going to get challenged on a lot of the things. People are going to come into the workplace saying, not a day, there's not a day that I'm going to be doing this kind of work the way you're asking me to. Forget it. You're doing it based on what you knew, based on the tools you had, and based on the background you had. These are the tools I have, this is the knowledge I have, and this is what I see going in the future. So you can have a smooth transition in your policies and procedures by having that segue of information, or you can have a very abrupt transition. I would start now.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to risk too, right? And managing that risk. So starting yesterday, to get there, because that looming gap is coming. And the communication part is really intriguing to me. And Sandra, maybe you can explore this topic a little bit more. The communication between, these younger, inexperienced folks coming in and these, older, experienced folks that are ready to retire. Like, how does this come together, do you think?
I'm just wondering why you asked me that question. I'm just kidding.
Because you have the knowledge.
So from the perspective, I'd first like to go back to the whole concept of, the equity, diversity. You see the policies that are popping up in every organization. And really, one of the points that I believe you raised was, why? Why is this happening? And I don't think people really comprehend that issue very well. So, going back to the stats that I provided, that's one of the reasons, the workforce shortages. I don't even think people realize how many boomers held back because of it. And so when you say it's going to hit, and it's going to hit very quickly, it's going to hit very quickly because some of them have held back and some of them will just naturally be leaving. So in one of the upcoming topics this afternoon was, Jeff, is actually the question that you're asking. So I'm not going to delve into that too much, but I will tell you that I am a boomer. And with that, about 2 weeks ago, I was looking for courses because what am I going to do when I retire? I'm probably going to have to apply for something else and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I thought, I'm going to look for what courses there are about communication. And there are actually courses out there for young people to learn how to communicate with us. Right? Wow. So I think that's really important that we comprehend that, because I did the course just to see what was in there. So respect is one of the primary pillars of that, okay? So understanding why we are where we are today and what we bring to the table. You know what? I have a whole staff of young people, and thank God for that, because I'm not a techie. Okay? So from the perspective of my respect for them, it's there. So it's communicating the respect of the history of this business back to them and what they can learn from us. And then it's communication, right? One of the recommendations might have been facilitation as well. But we have to talk to each other. We can't isolate, because that can happen very quickly. I'm over here and you're over there. We don't speak the same language. So it's really critical that we're speaking to each other when we're trying to figure out these issues.
Super. Well, it's very clear to me, just from conversation, that we're aligned on the merits of technology coming into the industry. Why that's a good thing, and keep doing it. Okay. And we also see the upside of growing our diversity in terms of the workforce itself, but in the ways that we work together and being more diverse and open with our conversations and learning respectfully from each other. I think that's very clear. And talking about some of the ways to manage the gap. Now, we're just throw ourselves out 6 years. We're in 2030. And if you were to have a crystal ball and just think about, geez, if only we had thought about that back at that WSN panel, like these are the top risks coming at the mining industry. So I'm just curious, and we won't hold you to it, but I just maybe start with Stella and just share with this group here 1 or 2 things that are going to keep you up at night over the next 6 years. What should we focus on to get to zero harm?
Well, this conversation topic is a big fear of mine, which is the succession planning for the baby boomers. That's the first one, because we see it even in our organization. You have the lifers, the people that have been there for 20, 30 years, and when you look out at your team, it's, oh my God, they're all going to retire at the same time. And that intelligence, that knowledge, that skill is inherently what the newcomers coming on board don't have. And that's where the safety comes into that conversation. Are they being trained? Are they being mentored? Do they know the inherent safety risks in their roles? So that's something that keeps me up at night, is how do we create mentorship programs, training programs for the newcomers that are coming on board? So that's number one.
Okay.
And then I would say that the second one is, actually, you said it again. So the introduction of technology, like, a robotic bolter, for instance, and you said that's going to bring in, a whole nother conversation of potential litigation and risks and things like that. And it's true. And it's like, overall, as a company, how are you preparing for that? So that's a conversation we're having right now. And what are those steps that you need to take to make sure that when you are providing these types of technologies to the mining industry, the validation processes, the testing processes, the things that you're doing, like, for instance, we have a test facility, and that was the whole point of getting that facility, was to be able to test in an environment that's controlled. So fail fast, create, a product that is safe, that we can commercialize and send to the end user where there is no risk. So that's another.
Those are your two?
Two, yeah,
Okay.
and I took them from you, so thank you.
See, that's sharing, right? Sharing knowledge. I'm going to jump to a guess on this now. If you were to, stand out 6 years, what are the two that are going to be the ones that we should keep an eye out for?
Well, right now, I mean, there's no doubt that the mining space has been taking on the challenge and trying a lot of new technologies and putting themselves out there to research. But I find that one of the things that keeps me up at night is also the inaction at the same time, right? So the risk of doing something is more apparent than doing nothing. And I would say that that keeps me up. We don't have that luxury in time and how we have to produce. We got an aging workforce that's leaving that we have to capture as much as we can from. And that resistance is also going to create some barriers. So, for example, as people are resistant of letting go of that piece of paper because they're very comfortable of reading their prints this way or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
and that's what you grew up with, and that's what you have a hard time letting go. So you hear that conversation of, no, we don't want cell phones in a workplace. You're bringing in a workforce that has not had it out of their hands.
Right.
So you talk about mental health, you talk about engagement, you talk about how you're going to leverage that talent. You are going to cripple them by not putting in a program that allows them to keep using the tools. They didn't have a library. They didn't have an encyclopedia. Everything's there. Everything is at their fingertips.
True.
You take that away, you've now completely crippled that human being.
Right.
So that keeps me up at night. And when you hear about the engagement side of things, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion, you don't put a program in place to start, including your workforce and engaging with them regularly. We talked just last week about the positive recognition program that we have in our tools with Sofvie, and the response was, they got paid Friday. I was pretty sure. I don't understand what you're talking about.
Oh, wow.
Right? So that kind of stuff keeps me up at night. Just that resistance to let go of your current ways and realize that you're fading out. Like you gotta start learning for what's coming in to create that legacy that you want to leave behind, and not be the crusty person that couldn't let go of the past. And then that's what you leave behind as your mark, right? Okay. So take on the challenge. Don't be so resistant. Realize how much you're crippling the workforce of the future by holding on to the past. That's what keeps me up.
Those are great points. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, without a cell phone, I don't know if anybody's ever, where's my phone, right? Like, it's the panic, even our generation, my generation anyway. But you can imagine for those of you that were born with a cell phone in your hand, right? That, without it, it's a very lost world. I want to shift into the mine rescue topic in particular, Sandra, on this one, if you can talk about it, because I know, that's near and dear to your heart. Mine rescue in 2030, what is that going to look like? How are we going to make sure that mine rescue is, absolutely operating at the top in peak performance?
It's a really good question because the mine rescue group has really been looking at technology themselves within WSN. And so the mine rescue that we're used to seeing is changing. And they're looking at things so that they can communicate better. So if you remember the rescue last year with the the ropes. They're looking at new styles of ropes that are working much better and will end in a better result. They're looking at, I'm not techie, okay, but the robotics that you don't have to actually be there. There's cameras attached. All of that is new technology for mine rescue with new costs, by the way. Okay, so I'm throwing that little budgetary thing in there because it's important that we move forward. It's important that we move forward together and that so the people who are manufacturing those new technologies coming, that we understand what they are. Take the electric vehicles, for example. We know the challenges with fires, and we're looking at that quite in depth. But the solutions are everybody's solutions, especially when we're talking about this group here. We're the safety group, right? And so we want to make sure that when those things happen, that we're taking in the human factor. We're looking at what it could mean for them. So there's a lot of change in the works and a lot of things that we're looking at. But I am not the professional on this, but I will tell you that those activities are there and the requests for looking at it come to the board of directors. And so they are on top of that.
Okay, super. That's really great information to share as well. That those are the changes coming in through the mine rescue. So thanks for that. I'm going to end with Rod on this one because you have access to Chat GPT, I understand. And so you probably do have, an idea what the top tier risks are going to be for the mining industry by 2030. But can you, all kidding aside, from what you see, your statistics, your knowledge of this industry, what are the things that we really need to have prioritized?
I think what I would add to the conversation is psychological safety. So mental stress injuries are in every sector, and mining isn't going to be protected from this. The fastest growing claims and the most expensive claims. So for me, that comes back to culture again, because a lot of our conversation has been around injuries that we actually see. And culture is important to that in terms of, again, having an organization where people feel comfortable to talk about whatever their injury is. When it comes to mental stress injuries and we can't see them, if you don't have a culture that is where there's open dialogue and your employees and perhaps what they're going through, that leaks over into and affects work in terms of presenteeism, absenteeism, and what we do know from other sectors is that mental stress injuries, the duration of those claims are far longer. And they're far longer because we get to them too late. So having a culture and an environment at work where it's safe to talk about what's going on in our heads, and it's safe to talk to my manager about perhaps what's going on at home, because we know with mental stress injuries, those are also more complex because there's no barrier anymore between, really between work, family, and home life. So I think organizations really need to be thinking about that because the data is already piling up in terms of claims. And again, they're the most costly. So getting primary and secondary interventions on those claims are really, really important.
That's a great point. And I just wonder, are other, if we talk about mental health, I'm just, picking you on this one. So are there providers that can help, other than our leaders, I'm your boss and we can talk about how is the family and things like that. But in terms of getting counseling services, if you like, are those types of services available? Is that something WSIB supports? And where does that fall?
Yeah, we do support it, but we need to remember that when we're talking about counseling, that's now tertiary. Okay. And the mental stress injury is already a strain. We're not getting at it when it's a stressor or, it's not leading to a strain. So we are supportive of it. Workplace Safety North is a provider of WSIB's Health and Safety Excellence Program. WSIB's Health and Safety Excellence Program does have mental stress injuries as some of the topics that are built into our 39 topics, and we do offer rebates for organizations to be investing in improving their workplace safety outcomes. So that's a place that you can begin with, but it's also just, again, coming back to the culture and what you have built into your organization at the primary and secondary level of intervention is far more important, because those are the things that you can be doing to help people to avoid the incident, or to help people, help workers avoid that injury in the first place.
Can I just jump in there for a
Yes,
second? Because
please.
one of the things that we see legally is a real influx of those cases that you're talking about. And I 100% agree that when we talk about culture and respect and why we're going here and what it looks like, you're going to avoid some of those things, right? Because if you wait till it's with the WSIB, that's the aftermath of it, right? So what do we do long before that? And as safety people, it's very much like the programs that you work with and you build. It's like building a plan, it's like having a policy, it's like follow-up, it's like making sure everybody's on the same page. It's very, very critical that we move in that direction.
Yeah, and WSIB's Health and Safety Excellence Program is about getting in front of that. So, as Jeff said in his opening remarks, ideally we're put out of business. And the Health and Safety Excellence Program is helping organizations prepare their organization so the injuries don't happen.
Perfect. Gus or Stella, did you want any final comments on this topic or anything that we've talked about during this panel? Gus, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, don't discount how far a good positive recognition goes.
Okay.
You know, it's one thing to come to work every day and do what needs to get done and try to self-gratify based on what you can see you've done and accomplished and go home. But there's a lot of work that, just like mental health issues, you don't see. You're working all day and you don't see anything. I mean, I talk to our developers all the time, right? And they're like, hey, we're going to see something, because it goes sometimes months of background work before you can even demonstrate any kind of outcome. So, making sure that everybody's in tune. So we've actually embedded it every day where there's a positive recognition every single morning within the groups that we meet with, so that we keep that motivation moving forward and we keep that engagement, and that nobody's left behind.
Okay.
Right? Everybody feels like they're significant. They're part of the program, they're part of it, and they're appreciated in the work that they're doing. Just don't discount that, how important it is for mental health.
Do not discount positive recognition. Thank you. Stella, anything to add?
I'll just end it on, we've unlocked a couple of new fears for me, so thanks everybody. I've actually learned quite a bit on this panel, so I'm grateful for that. And I hope everyone else has maybe taken away something that can help them within their organization. I wasn't aware that one of the biggest challenges we're facing is mental health. Although I say that, what I can say is that we have also known, in our organization, an increase in mental health and wellness. So it does make sense. And my takeaway is just to go back and kind of uncover how we're looking at that, forward looking at that, and how we're actually taking into account how to maybe look at proactive measures versus reactive, as you point out. So thanks for that.
Good. Rod, final thought?
Great conversation with all the panelists here, and at WSIB we're here to help. We really do want to help create safer organizations, so I think there's been some excellent discussions here, and look forward to seeing some of this actually come into action, because that's the important piece when you walk away from these discussions is, what am I going to do?
Do something. Yep, I like that. Sandra?
So the final comment that I would like to make is that I kind of expressed how I grew up in a neighborhood that there were not two languages the same, that relying on each other and understanding that this is the tomorrow that we have really makes us value each other more and respect each other more. And I think that those conversations at work are timely at this point. We're changing. The environment's changing.
You're good? Okay. Nothing, Gus?
I thought we already.
We already did.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, so it's back to me. And
I'll talk all afternoon.
we have
This
a
is not my
5-minute
conference.
warning.
Welcome,
so-
everyone.
But please, to the audience, please catch up with these panelists over coffee and have a deeper discussion with them, because they've really brought to light some very important points And, you know, just the fact of take this home with you and think about it and bring it to work and talk about it is really the underlying message that I have taken away myself. And so thank you to these panelists for their insights today, for taking their time. I know you got a flight to catch and you're probably mentally stressed at this moment. I want to make sure you get on it. I will ask Alicia just to come up and say the final thank yous for this panel.
And definitely we've got some gifts behind you too, Sam.
Oh.
Yeah, so again, thank you very much to each of the panelists and providing us with your expert.
Okay, well, can we give them a round of applause? Yeah. Thank you so much.
And Gus, you hit the head on the nail. People are resistant to change, and I think really people need to be open to it and really embrace change. And to the panelists, I appreciate you sharing, your personal stories, because I think, a lot of your personal stories have really driven you and your organizations to develop and launch new innovations and technologies which will really create a safer future and a more inclusive workplace for all.